very much, Trevor. Trevor Coopersmith, everybody. As I was doing this research for you, you are a very interesting guy, I must say, man. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I've got a few questions for you. Oh, but first, let me start off by telling everyone I met Trevor at a gallery showing actually in Santa Monica. It was Free Hester's show, if I'm recalling correctly. And I usually go to these things solo. And I met Trevor there and we started talking. And eventually I knew I wanted to invite him on the show. And here we are today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Phil. I appreciate it.
Where are you from and where are you currently located?
Yeah, I'm from San Diego originally.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm actually in my studio at Otis College. So I'm a fine arts student here.
Okay, awesome. All right. Well, I usually like to ask the artists, have they always been artistic their entire lives? But I found out your dad is an artist. Your dad has been an artist for, a very long time. So I would imagine some of this, is in your blood. You've been seeing art in your entire life. But for you personally, were you always artistically inclined?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my family kind of moved around a lot because of my dad's career. And we moved across the country and back by the time I was in the 4th grade. So I was living in like 4 or 5 different states. And I remember the one thing that was like consistent was just drawing and painting. So that's what kind of helped me get in the groove of things. Like I got into a pretty fair amount of trouble and stuff in school. I ended up getting expelled and like for a year and just kind of the usual teenage angst stuff, but kind of amplified. And painting was just sort of that saving grace. So I went to Mexico and I saw someone doing like the spray paint art. It's called aerosol graffiti. And it's pretty common in like Vegas, San Francisco. And I just fell in love with it. And I went home and asked my dad, like, hey, can you buy me some spray paint? Because I was 15. You couldn't buy spray paint.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, awesome. So was that your first sort of serious medium? Was it spray painting? Other than, drawing and sketching when you're younger, was that the first thing you really got into?
Yeah. And what really like gravitated me towards it was like how gestural it was. And it felt like a dance, it was very performative. It didn't seem like I was just kind of sitting there meticulously with a brush. It felt very like active and engaging. So I really like that. Yeah.
I took this tour. Well, I lived downtown for a very long time, downtown Los Angeles, and there's just, a ton of graffiti art down there. But just the culture of graffiti art in general, I don't know. It's kind of like its own little world unto itself. Not to separate them from, other traditional artists, but it's almost like a brotherhood of people that do graffiti art. It's amazing.
That's true. And I kind of grew up like painting at home mostly. I didn't do a ton of graffiti, maybe like a little bit here and there, but just like the act of using spray paint, it's considered so like rebellious. And like even though it's a relatively new medium, it's associated with this kind of like group of like counterculture, which I think is really important. There's a lot of people who use it as like their outlet and their voice. When they can't necessarily speak about like or they can't actually get their message out, what they're really trying to articulate. So it's very useful. And it's also good for covering like, big murals and like large surface areas and stuff. So there's definitely like a political and a like social and practical use with spray paint.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. All right. So I want to ask you, I found this very interesting also, how when you had went to college, initially, that was the idea was to study art in college, but you went the JCO route. I already had 4 jobs paying for school, no loans, nothing like that. How was that experience? Because I did the same thing. I'm a proud, Pasadena City College and LA City College, a student, but having to go that route, not having the financial support of your parents, having this, this dream of becoming a professional artist, were you ever deterred at all? Because that's a lot on your plate for, someone, 18 years old.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty interesting question. So, when I started getting in trouble, my parents basically said, you got to figure it out yourself. We
Yeah.
can't help you with school. And I think that was like the biggest sort of like wake up moment, where, I asked my parents, I was like, okay, how much can you help me out with school? I was like, expecting some number, but they literally said zero, like,
Yeah.
good luck.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was super daunting for sure. And I kind of realized, yeah, community college was for sure the way to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do come from like a fairly stable family, and kind of I do have like a bit of a security blanket to fall back on, but like I knew our school was not going to be cheap,
Oh
and
yeah.
so community college was for sure the way to go. And so I did 3 years there, and then all 3 years just worked like did multiple jobs, everything from lifeguarding to modeling to teaching,
Yeah.
like selling paintings and stuff, and then just not going out much and just saving up everything I could. And yeah, then I went to UC Santa Barbara, made it out debt free,
That's
and
great.
yeah, and then I ended up going to London to study and try to get my master's, and COVID and all that stuff kind of threw like a wrench in things.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a
So
whole other story.
when you
Yeah.
were in London, was that like the beginning stages of COVID? Had like a lot of countries have been on lockdown at that time?
So I went in fall of 2019, I believe, and then right when spring 2020 came around, that's when yeah things really hit the fan. And my school was already having issues with strikes.
Oh
Like
really?
our professors and everyone was striking, and I was missing class, and it just like wasn't really like the right
Yeah.
atmosphere for me to learn, and I wasn't
Yeah.
getting my money's worth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up withdrawing from the program, and now I've got like a much bigger studio space. It's been like a couple years in between, obviously, but I've done 2 residencies, and that's kind of helped me like
Yeah.
get my footing and stuff. But Otis has been like a lot more accommodating, like meeting with faculty, like they actually respond to me instead of
Okay.
in London, like when they're on strike, they're just
That's it.
gone. And yeah, I mean, it was tough, and I I gave it the old college try. I went out there,
Yeah.
gave it my best shot, and
Yeah.
it just wasn't like the right atmosphere for me. But you know, I kind of took it as a little speed bump, but now I'm getting my footing again here in LA.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I feel a lot more comfortable here, and the food is much better here too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. I've never been to London, but I've heard, it's not the most appetizing or, seasoned sort of food in Europe.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. Maybe it's worth a visit, but like living there was just a little tough. It was just a tough winter for me, being like a
Yeah.
kind of spoiled SoCal kid. I was like, man, this
Yeah.
is tough. Like it's dark here all day.
Yeah. 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 I know what you mean, man. It's people like to say a lot of things about California, Southern California in particular. But man, I tell you, there's nothing like growing up in Southern California when, it's pretty much 75 degrees all year round. And, if you want to go see the snow, you can, drive up north or, San Gabriel, San Bernardino
Mm.
Mountains, go see the snow. But yeah. And I mean, in San Diego too, that's like, I mean, it's like someone made that place up, it's it's a beautiful place to live.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. I'm super thankful to call San Diego home, but
Yeah.
LA's been, um, I mean, really interesting. Like, there's just so much to do. It's like so many concerts and galleries,
Oh yeah.
museums.
Yeah.
Much. I mean, it feels a lot more diverse, and then just like a huge breadth of just like activities, whatever to do, and people to meet. And
Hmm.
I mean, like every little city in LA feels so different. Where in San Diego, they can kind of blend together a little bit. So
Sure.
I'm definitely thankful to be up here in LA.
I wanted to get into some of your pieces, and I've had a hard time trying to narrow it down because there's so many things that I wanted to talk about. But before I get into that, I wanted to ask your opinion about the state of the LA art scene, because I feel like it's growing. I feel like it's, it's a very good place to be for, emerging artists. Have you had any, I don't know, I don't want to say drawbacks, but I know a lot of people have to deal with, especially someone that moves out here, someone that's new, of not knowing the right people, or, trying to find out how to get into the right galleries. Have you had any sort of bumps in the road when it comes to that?
I'm still fairly new here to the scene, so I can only speak on maybe like the last year. But one thing I have noticed, it does feel like there's a lot of, it's a lot of who you know, it's a lot of name dropping.
Sure.
And, I mean, at the end of the day, there's still people that are behind this. And I think you could find your community anywhere. And there's a lot of good nonprofits and organizations. And, I like showed with a space that works with like adults with disabilities, donating work for them. And, I feel like you could find your niche.
Yeah.
Even what you're doing, like just interviewing like a huge variety of artists is super important. And just going to like the spaces and connecting with the right people and like putting yourself out there is really what matters. But I think one big drawback that maybe LA could kind of, throw at people is like, it's just not a cheap place to live. I mean, rent is insane here.
It's ridiculous.
It is
absolutely ridiculous. That was sort of one of the reasons why I started the show. My dad's an artist. I kind of grew up in the arts district downtown. Now, if you've been down there like lately, that's not what it looked like when I was, in high school, in my teens and early 20s. And all of those artists, and it's such, if you know the history of that place, it was such a big, it was such a big thing for the LA art scene, in the 70s and the 80s, that, and I even just a lot of musicians that were down there, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were down there, a lot of, classic LA bands were down in that area. And it was, just a affordable place to live. Cause I mean, when I was down there, no one wanted to live there. And then it became such a hip place to be. And I saw, in real time with my own eyes, just all the artists get priced out because, now it's kind of a hip place to be in Los Angeles, when it was not like that at all. It kind of blows my mind. So I wanted to, anything I can do to give back to the artists, because I mean, it is, the life of a starving artist, is kind of, I mean, it's sort of cliche, but it's kind of a real thing, especially out here.
It's important to talk about that stuff for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I mean, I feel like out of all of, I guess, the, entertainment markets, I feel like artists sort of get the short end of the stick. And with the advancements, and actually, the pieces that are behind you, I wanted to talk about those. One of the series that I wanted to talk about, because, okay, so this was your AI series. And I was reading that you use an AI generator, and then you painted the pieces that the generator spit out. Am I saying that correctly? I don't want to misinterpret your process.
Yeah, I mean, you got it. There's like very subtle compositional and like color adjustments that I'll make, but for the most part, I'm basically painting what I'm seeing. And it's funny because like I'm in graduate school and like as a painter and someone who wants to, develop like a style or an aesthetic. There's like this whole aura with graduate school that you're supposed to be like, or just maybe a painter in general is supposed to be like this, person who's like working in like this little hole all day until like this genius like light bulb switch turns on. And that's like that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because I'm like using AI, which is a little daunting for some people, understandably. And I'm sort of like representing the natural world like, using AI. So I'm kind of combining like these two like equally weighted concepts, like technology and nature.
Yeah.
And I feel like they're both, have the same gravity of like of language, right?
Yeah.
And so with these generators, is like I'm typing in like a certain artist style and certain images that I'm interested in and I feel like are symbolic.
Mhm.
And then I'm sort of painting and like recreating those works that come out. AI, has a lot of really like uncanny images that come out.
Yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm picking the ones that kind of feel um, like more palatable,
Okay.
more like graspable. Because there's some that are just like, this person has 6 fingers or
Yeah, yeah.
what's going on.
If you don't mind, if you don't mind sharing, which AI platform are you using a variety of different ones? Are you using one in particular?
Yeah, so I'm using Dolly,
Oh, sure. Yeah,
DALLE.
yeah,
Yeah, and I just haven't explored too many others yet, but so far Dolly's worked for me,
yeah,
and yeah, I'm totally open to sharing my style. Like anyone can do it, and
yeah.
I'll actually be running a workshop at the Palos Verdes Art Center
Okay.
where I'll be teaching kids to just do the same sort of work. It's just like type in,
Yeah,
whatever they want, and then we'll select the images and paint them.
yeah,
So I feel like it's super important to be open with techniques and stuff, and like I know my style and I know like how I
yeah,
can approach paintings and stuff, and um, yeah, there's no like big secret or anything, but AI is it's kind of
yeah,
like the new frontier of like weirdness that's going on
yeah,
now, so it's fun.
yeah. Okay, I want to ask you a couple more questions about that series, but there was something you talked about, and something that I was learned reading your artist statement, and I know that I guess the incorporation or the interconnectability of nature and human beings on this earth is sort of well, forgive me if I'm wrong, but a bit of an inspiration for you. I know there's a lot of natural pieces and um a lot of the like the Sky Labyrinth installation that you had, a lot of them incorporate, you know, sort of the experience of nature and humans interacting with it. There was something that you have in your statement that I found very compelling. Even if you don't mind me reading it, my work is a response to the challenges of modernity and explores juxtapositions between ourselves and embodiment and relationship to existence. And I thought that was, a very good way to put it. Do you think that with the way that technology is sort of, it's kind of like you can't escape it. Unless you're out, in the middle of nowhere, you're using some sort of technology to get by. Do you think that technology has had an impact on the way that we treat the environment, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's this book called The End of Nature by Bill McKibben,
Mhm.
and I thought it was really interesting because like this like concept of nature, uh, like otherness and like exoticized is like
Mhm.
very inherent in like Western, especially like American ideologies. And in that book, he kind of challenges that a little bit. Like there is no real like definition of nature because we've influenced and impacted,
Yeah.
what our idea of nature is, just with how we treat the world.
Yeah.
And so there is no like clear defining line anymore. It is really
Yeah.
difficult to like go somewhere and see like zero traces
Yeah.
of people, um, at least in my like general
Oh
area.
yeah.
And yeah, but I mean, I grew up camping, I grew up backpacking. My family, like we compost, rain barrel.
Yeah.
I try to bike to school, like every little thing I can do. It's
Mhm.
um, and I reuse a lot of stuff. I used to paint like
Yeah.
old surfboards, and
Sure. Yeah.
anyways, yeah, and I use a lot of scrap wood and like reclaimed wood.
Yeah.
So yeah, important to me. So anyways, but this idea that of like yeah, nature and technology being intertwined, I feel like if we kind of take lessons and like natural objects and treat them the same as like technology and like intertwine them in a sense that we could learn from them. I feel like that's sort of the proper way to, or maybe like an ideal sort of way to like go about things, because we as humans, we kind of feel, well, at least in like America, we usually feel like we're no help. We're like just doing nothing but destroying and consuming.
Sure.
And and it feels like there's maybe, like, I'm sure this, like walking around downtown, you get there, you're like, what the hell am I going to do to clean this place up or like fix it? Like our world is, nowhere near perfect, but like there are little steps that we could do. And there's a lot we could learn. Like, I feel like there's so much we could learn from a cactus or, an agave, whatever.
Sure.
Like or just like staring out at the ocean. Like, waves are just such a good analogy for life. It's very cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah, I dig it. Yeah, man. And and that actually brings you back to the AI series, because I thought that it was very clever how you implemented the AI to sort of get an idea about what you were going to do, and then you add it back in the human element by painting it yourself. So what you're doing with the series, in my opinion, is exactly what you were saying. You're saying it's the interconnectability of technology and the human experience. I thought that was an awesome series.
Thanks. Yeah, it's ironic because like AI feels so like cold and distant. And, but it really is just like a community of like beliefs, and it's machine learning. It's like even the creators don't like fully know about everything that's going on, but I think of it as like a tool, an apparatus.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's just like with everything else, there's something that if we embrace it and like make it like empathize with it in its source, then we can use it to our advantage.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm it's interesting because I'm preparing this video about AI when it in reference to art. Do you think so there was a story about a man, I think it's in Colorado, who used what was it? Not Dolly, it was Midjourney. He'd entered an art contest with other traditional artists, and he won the contest using AI art. Now, it's different from what you're doing. You're actually painting. You're using it, as a reference or something. But this man really just prompted in, cleaned up the image and submitted it. Do you think that sort of thing will maybe minimize the work of traditional artists?
That's a complicated, very complicated question. I don't think so. I think with like the advancement of technology, there will always be, like an affinity for the hand, like the human. Yeah. But I think it is super important to note that if you're making work that we're like searching work of living artists or taking work from people who don't want their work taken, then that's kind of problematic. Yeah. So I think that's where like the agency lies in. Like I'll only type in artists who are dead as a reference.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Or ones that I feel like maybe take out certain biases. Like if you type in, I remember hearing like if you type in a businessman getting ready for his big day, like it's a white man in a suit. Yeah. And I think that's important to address because it's that's like that's what we conceive like a businessman to be. It's like a stereotype, like a hierarchy that's in place that like doesn't need to be there. And I feel like it's important to sort of like break down those hierarchies and like investigate what we like reevaluate what we consider to be like a businessman or what we consider nature to be or what those sort of things. So I feel like that's where it can get a little problematic in a sense. It's like there's been a huge history of artists just stealing shit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That when it comes to something something like art or even like music or things like that, things people enjoy, it's always going to be a problem. It's but the issue I had with this man using Midjourney to enter a competition is, these some of these AI engines are, like you said, they're taking from living artists, they're taking from dead artists, so it's really a kind of a slippery slope. I think that artists should have the ability to say, hey, I don't want AI, learning from my stuff, and if that's the case, they should, have the right to remove it. But yeah, that, just my thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you. In what way did your environment growing up influence the way that you create art?
Yeah. So I think what was really important for me was just finding like a sense of place and like belonging, and feeling like I was doing something productive through art making. And it's weird because like if people can really sense that, it's very like esoteric, but people could really like grasp on to how much like energy you put into something.
Yeah.
And I've been painting since I was, well, it's been what, like 13, at least like 13 years.
Yeah.
And um, yeah, I mean, it was just like that's like safe embrace that I really needed. And I was like, I was just, I mean, going through some like abuse and drugs and fighting and just some real, trouble for me. It was just something that like really pulled me out of it. And, I take art making very seriously, and I want to share that with people. I even started like a small like scholarship foundation where I give back some money to kids.
I do want to talk about that. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, hold up. Not yet though. That's on my list, and I think that's absolutely awesome what you're doing. It's a very good thing.
Thank you.
Okay, now
it's very important.
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. You know what? No, let's talk about it now. So you've had this is it the I have it right here. Urban Art Scholarship. And you started this in 2016. Now, what gave you, the motivation to start the scholarship?
Yeah, so I was in my undergrad at UC Santa Barbara, and I was doing okay financially. I was like getting a lot of work through the community, and like things were going well. I was like volunteering a lot. I was working with nonprofits, and I was just comfortable. And after like the 4 or 5 years of like wondering, how the hell am I going to make it through school financially? I felt like I could kind of breathe again. And I felt like it was my obligation to sort of give back some of the, some of the comfort that I have to people who need it. And I mean, it's only $350, but I try to get it out there to a lot of high school students who need it. And I feel like just having something on your resume, helps a lot. And when I first started it at Santa Barbara, I did like a group exhibition on campus, and I showed some of the applicants' work. So I got, like some of their art hanging up in a gallery and stuff. Art is very like, well, for me, it's very community driven, and I feel like it's not as isolating as some people make it. So it's, things go full circle, and I feel like it's important to keep that circle moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's an absolutely wonderful thing, especially for, maybe a high school student who, sometimes you might not feel like this is something that you could do professionally, especially at a very young age. Especially if you're not really exposed to those sort of things growing up, and it's something that you really want to do. I applaud you. It's a very good thing you're doing. Really great.
Thank you. Yeah, and even if like you don't get accepted with scholarship, like the idea of writing about your work, selecting images, like photoshopping them, whatever, is just like building a portfolio and building like talking about your work is a huge part of the process. And I used to give feedback. I still do it a little bit if they request it. If they're not successful applicants, at least they can get some feedback on like how they can improve their application, So I feel like that's, it's just part of the process, is like applying for grants, applying for exhibitions. it's pretty normal to hear a bunch of no's, but
sure.
but how can you improve? There's only so much money and resources out there.
That's true.
But at least I could give a little bit back.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And also the experience of, a young artist, having to, submit their work and, have someone look at it. I mean, it's great. And to start so young too. Especially because I know for a lot of people, art school might not be attainable, or at least in their minds, not yet, but to have that, just that experience of sending something in and having someone, look at it, it's something.
Yeah. And that whole idea and weight of grad school is a whole nother conversation. But there are a bunch of free schools out there for graduate programs. A lot of the UCs are free. There's some European schools that are free. I ended up getting about half my tuition covered here at Otis, which is nice, but it's still not cheap. But I'm making it work. Nice. I'm TAing, I'm substitute teaching, I'm painting.
The life of an artist, man. Yeah, that's awesome. Was it important to you to finish grad school, to get your master's and all that in art?
Yes.
Was that always was the goal?
Yes, 100%. So I want to teach at the college level, specifically community college.
Yeah.
I want to go back and, preferably on the West Coast, but we'll see what happens. But but community college was just a place I felt so welcomed in at home. Yeah. And I want to teach there, and I need my master's. I need my MFA.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. I wanted to talk about another this was more of an installation of yours that I saw on your website, and I thought this was great too. The Sky Labyrinth installation. Okay. So this was in, where's this in? I'm being this Missouri, is that right?
Michigan.
Oh, Michigan. I'm sorry. Oh, am I? Okay, so this was it's a great piece. You've got, I think it's Jupiter painted on, reclaimed wood. You've got a loop of NASA images in the background, reflective mirrors, smoke, in a barn that's built in, what's this, 1913. I mean, the whole thing is just, the concept of it is amazing. Now, what was the idea behind this? Was this some sort of, was this for school, for a residency you had, or you just had this idea sort of come together?
Kind of all three.
Yeah.
Kind of everything. But so it was for a residency in Michigan. So I applied, and it was during COVID, and then they reached out to me just before I started school here. And I came out there. I made a whole trip out of it. I visited my friend on the East Coast, and we drove out there, and so I got to see a whole new part of the U.S., which was really interesting. And then my initial idea, because he's an archaeologist, we wanted to build a little labyrinth using found materials around the lake. So it's up near the Great Lakes, and I wanted to build a labyrinth in the barn. But by the time I got there, I realized the space was so huge.
Yeah.
That I just moved everything up to the sky. So I called the Sky Labyrinth. But I built using all reclaimed wood, that 6 foot tall planet, and then used reflective mirrors, smoke machine, and then we have projections of the Webb telescope, the new NASA images, and then got I think it was 2/3 of the town showed up. It was a small town.
Oh, really?
And they just kind of sat up there and enjoyed the spectacle. But it was cool. It was partially bridging art and technology, and showcasing the advancements that we've made, and then also just kind of bringing the community together, and just creating a space for people to, just get inspired and sort of meditate, reflect on things, kind of what a labyrinth is for, right? I don't know if you've ever walked one, but they're very contemplative and reflective, and they make you very self-aware.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just thought it was so interesting that, okay, you're in this barn that's, built in 1913, and you've got, the NASA images kind of looped around. So this is, I mean, we're talking about galaxies that are, millions and millions years old, and, some of the first things that ever existed and that have always existed, but we didn't know or couldn't have known until the advancement of technology. So you've got sort of, these giant galaxies all around. And I didn't realize this, the Jupiter is 6 feet. I mean, oh my
It's
gosh.
at least 6 feet.
Oh, that's huge. Yeah. The pictures, I guess, don't give a justice to the size, but yeah, but I'm thinking you've got all of this sort of, you've got the space, infinite time around you. You've got things that have always been there, but we didn't know until technology. And a barn that's built in 1913. Just, I mean, I thought it was great. I mean, the whole thing is awesome, man. This is, I wish I could have seen this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it was only up for like a week. It was a pretty like temporary installation. And it was fun. It was just a really good space to be, quite literally a space to be in, and sort of like trip out about everything that you're saying. And it was fun, and that's kind of how the barn felt. It was like this old, or relatively old for like American standards, barn.
Sure.
And it was an old bee barn. Like there was honeycombs and like a beekeeper was there for a while. And so it kind of felt like this hidden space. You kind of had to like, it was up in this attic, and I'll tell you, when it was dark in there, it was very dark, and it felt haunted. Like it was
I wouldn't be surprised. Something that old.
In like kind of middle America, and whatever. But anyways, but it was a super good experience. Like I ended up selling some work. Nice. And like a bunch of people showed up and like donated some money back to the community, like to support the residency. And it was just like a perfect, like full circle, moment where I got to make something that was like just covering a huge space. I mean, those ceilings were like 30 feet tall. They were big.
Wow. Yeah, that's a monster to take on. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I got to learn, a ton about the community. I mean, every day I would just go look at the lake, and those things are they're like oceans, man. I don't know if you've been out there, but they're so powerful and volatile.
Yeah.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I was just going to say, like, this idea of like feeling smaller, like insignificant, has kind of been like a running theme through my work. It's like sort of confronting people with this idea that like we're not, always the top of the food chain, I guess, or like the the pinnacle of existence. There's a lot to learn from other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I want to talk about the Entanglements of Elevation series. So you took an 8-day journey skateboarding. There's a solo trip. You did this by yourself?
One friend, my best friend.
Okay.
Together. I was going to continue after the 8 days to keep going solo, but there was some massive fires.
In
California. And I threw a wrench in things, and also my foot was like pretty jacked up. It was I was not fully capable of continuing.
Sure.
But yeah, so we flew up to San Francisco airport, and this is during the pandemic, and like after I got back from London. And I initially had this thought of like I wanted to just like walk like a huge distance of California. I was like, oh, might as well try it on skateboard. And like we're pretty big on backpacking and camping, so it's like maybe we'll combine everything. So we just rode our skateboards like straight out of the airport and went 115 miles south towards a city called Seaside, California. And yeah, it was just like a crazy trip, like 8 days. And there was a lot that went down, but just spending that much time outside was really interesting. And like just sort of in this like crazy time that we're experiencing with COVID, it's that idea of like slowing down.
Yeah.
You know, not driving everywhere, not really like flying. It's just, I mean, I did fly to get there, but then like I spent 8 days of just riding,
Yeah.
just pushing, you
Yeah.
know.
Mhm. So the pieces that came out of this, did you already have the idea of what they were going to be before you started this, or was it something you kind of developed, during these 8 days?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was reading a book at the time called The Mushroom at the End of the World,
Okay.
and by Anna Singh, Tsing is her last name.
Okay.
And super cool book.
Okay.
And you know, this idea of like a mushroom being like this organism that is like the beginning and the end. It's like the decomposition of things, and like, but also regeneration, rebirth, and also like a mushroom cloud. You know, like dropping a
Yeah.
bomb.
Yeah.
You know,
The
mushroom
ultimate
cloud.
distraction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Destruction and death, but also, you know, like I said, rebirth and like this
Yeah.
entanglement. Like, I'm like mycology is super interesting to me because, you know, mushrooms are so good for you, but like people are kind of hesitant to forage because, you know, we're worried about getting sick and like eating,
Mhm.
you know, the wrong one that could like poison you or whatever.
Yeah.
But then we also have this like psychedelic
Sure.
connotation. It's sort of now being looked at as like microdosing and being like very
Oh yeah.
therapeutic,
Yeah.
trauma. And anyways, so yeah, I was just really interested in like mycology and mushrooms in general.
Mhm.
And then once I finished like the trip, I had like 8 circular canvases.
Okay.
I was like, man, I could make the bottoms of mushrooms, like the gills, and sort
Mhm.
of showing like that weird perspective, like looking up
Yeah.
at like a giant mushroom or something, and making work that sort of showed like the whole abstract encounter
Mhm.
things. So like the back portion of the pieces are very like abstract and like using
Yeah.
chants. Like I'll pour sand or rubbing alcohol or water on top of the spray paint. It'll sort of dilute,
Mhm.
move around. And then the bottom portion of the pieces are the elevation, gain, and loss of the
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah. I thought that
yeah,
was great. Yeah.
yeah, I was like kind of
Awesome.
mapping like where I went. Because there was one day we went up 1,500 feet and then down
Yeah.
1,500 feet. It was the same
Jesus.
day.
And a day. Oh wow. That's yeah, that's quite the change in elevation. My goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the outside of these. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, these are great pieces. I love these.
Thank you.
Gosh, would you ever think about doing something like that again? The the long journey to sort of entice this creative juices in
Uh, yeah.
you.
I'm probably tapped out for a little bit. I mean,
Yeah.
the first series I did was like I did 17 days of backpacking, and
Yes.
then did like 17 pieces from that. And you know, I do like to work in series, but I don't think my body's gonna like fully recover from the trip. And like
Yeah. So
that's
was that the John Muir series you're talking about, or was that something different? The
yeah.
oh my gosh, yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, being a Southern California guy himself, I really enjoyed these series of paintings here. Now, this was a little bit longer than the skateboarding trip. Now, was this before or after?
Yeah, this was 2017.
Okay.
So this was like a series that I made, I think once I graduated from
Mhm.
Santa Barbara. And then the series I made was kind of to help like build my portfolio for graduate
Okay.
school.
Yeah.
That's when I got into Goldsmiths, the school in London.
Yeah.
But
Okay. Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so it was a while ago, but I feel like I've always kind of been inspired by I guess this concept of like phenomenology is like taking experience and phenomenon and then translating that onto the canvas.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Do you, oh, I guess this doesn't really apply. I was going to say during, the time of COVID, was it hard to, have these same experiences when everything was sort of shut down? Or did that maybe make it a little bit better because you can't, I mean, for me at least, when everything got shut down and, I would go out, where I live and I'd go out at night and where I live, the city did a great thing, and they shut off this main street that has a lot of restaurants, bars, and allowed people to stay open with no car traffic. It was great, but I'd go out there at nighttime, and it was like a ghost town. I mean, it was absolutely insane. And when the parks opened back up, I love Griffith Park is my favorite place in Los Angeles. And once it opened back up, the first thing I noticed was, wow, a lot of these trails have overgrown. I was saying I hadn't seen rabbits in that park since since I was 15, and you see rabbits all over the place. Snakes everywhere. It was almost like the land reclaimed itself while everything was shut down. It was amazing. So was it a challenge at all during COVID to have these sort of experiences, outside?
I, you know, I know COVID was like a super, and still can be like a super difficult time for a lot of
Yeah.
people. I was doing okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, personally, I was fine. I just wanted to get home. That was like my biggest worry.
Sure.
When I was in London, I was like, man, this is not the place to be, like away
Yeah.
from my family, and like
Yeah.
things being shut off. Like Trump closed down flights and the borders and everything. So
Yeah.
I was
That's
like,
right.
I was just worried about getting home. And once I was
Yeah.
home, I was just happy to be with my family. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, where I was in North County, San Diego, like not a ton change. I wasn't in like New York. I wasn't
Sure.
in like downtown LA or something like
Yeah.
where things got hit really hard. Like my town was pretty mellow, and I had like a nice open space in my family's place, and just I was just happy to be with them, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
painting and just feeling healthy and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to be back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So you're saying maybe you're taking a step away from painting series. Are you going to be start doing maybe one-of-one paintings or or
Yeah, the AI series is I'm just gonna like go until it's exhausted. Like it
yeah.
might be 50 paintings, it might be like 20, but I'm trying to
Okay.
use the next year, I would say. So I'm actually doing one painting per week.
Oh wow. Okay.
So
Okay.
because
Was that the plan when you started the AI series?
um not totally, but like just in graduate school, I feel like everyone's saying you gotta work, gotta make stuff, and
Sure.
I build the panels, and then I like prime it, sand it, whatever, and then find the images and then paint it. So it's like a bit of a process, but I feel like I can make one per week, and
Okay.
that'll be like one good practice for me. It's just like
Mhm.
improving my painting, and then two, I want to create like so many images that it feels like I don't know what it's going to feel like, but it'll create some interesting feeling. Like once they're all
Okay.
installed in a certain
Yeah.
way, and
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just really curious to see if like I'll have a style, from AI.
Sure. Sure. Okay. Okay. All right. All
But
right.
we'll
We
see.
can get into all these questions. Is there anyone that has inspired you, on this art journey? I mean, even including your father, who was an artist. Is there someone that you sort of look to draw inspiration from, not necessarily stylistically, but even as just sort of the way they live their life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my dad is part of these like outdoor group exhibitions, like these art fairs and then
Mhm.
festivals. And that place has just been such a nice community because like we show up, like if you need something, like someone will offer it to you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll like provide breakfast or whatever they do with advertising, but it's like a big like city based event. It's
Yeah.
like public
That's nice.
engaged. Yeah, they're usually free.
Mhm.
And it's a lot of work. Like you don't really know what you're going to sell, if anything, at these
Sure.
festivals. But there's been so many artists that have really I've spoken to, and I love their practice and their style, and what they've developed, and like they have to
Mhm.
set up the booths on their own. They're driving like halfway across the country to do
Yeah.
these
Wow.
shows.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's a lot of like self representation. Not everyone gets picked up by like a big gallery,
Yeah.
and or whatever like makes it big, or and maybe not everyone has like that same security blanket
Yeah.
to fall back on, and like people grind really hard in like these festivals, and then
Yeah.
their work is maybe um, sometimes looked at as like not as conceptually or like politically
Hmm.
driven as like some work that you see in galleries and museums and stuff.
Sure.
But I think like the act of doing like a public outdoor like art event and making
Oh, yeah.
yourself present and engaging with the public
Yeah.
is political in a sense that you're making art more accessible for everyone.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because yeah, like you said, not everyone can get into a gallery. Not, I mean, a small percentage of people are going to be in museums. And that there's a there's a festival uh in Burbank. It's a traveling festival. I think it's the Jackalope Art Festival. And I love going to it because I'm not sure if it's exactly the sort of thing that you were talking about, but it's a lot of people coming and setting up their booths and selling their art, sort of face to face. Kind of like a I would say that's more of the like an old school sort of traditional style of, I mean, this is my stuff. What do you think? Would you like to buy it? What I mean, and most of it is affordable for someone who's not going to go to an art show and spend thousands of dollars on a piece of art. They can find, even if it's a local or someone that, like I said, driving across the country to come do one of these outdoor shows. It's something very organic about that it's I love to go to these art shows and support these people. It's a different sort of feeling than going to a show opening. You know what I mean? And also you get access to the artists and you can talk to them, and ask the we're happy to answer questions from you. It's more of a like I said, yeah, more organic sort of way of interacting with the artists. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
exactly. Yeah, well said. Sure.
Yeah. All right. All right. Well, I don't want to take up too much of of your time. Is there anything that you'd like to add, or do you have any shows upcoming, or anything you'd like to promote?
Yeah, so right now I've got a show downtown at the Gateway to Nature Center. It's
Okay.
called. It's yeah, close to Little Tokyo.
Okay.
And it's part of Avenue 50 Studio, which
Oh,
is
sure.
yeah up in Highland Park,
Hmm.
and it's like a show all about just climate catastrophe, climate change, like what's going on now.
Okay.
Like there's a big statue of Smokey the Bear inside.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So
really?
it's
Absolutely. Only you can prevent forest fires. That's right. I mean, and in California, man, it's people, are afraid of the earthquakes. I'm like, it's the fires you gotta worry about.
yeah,
Now,
and then
how long is the show going on for?
um, I think it's only up another few weeks.
Okay.
It's called Taking It to the Next Degree.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So that's what I've got going on now. And then other than that, just applying to things and just working.
Yeah.
And, I'm always trying to do residencies and stuff. That's been a great way to connect
Yeah.
with the community, like live somewhere new. I did one in Texas, and yeah, they talk about like earthquakes, and people are afraid of or people are like totally cool with tornadoes, but
Yeah,
then afraid of earthquakes and stuff.
that blows my mind. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I remember the Northridge earthquake, right? I think I don't know, maybe like 12 or 13, and that's the biggest earthquake I've experienced. I mean, it wrecked the city. Absolutely. I was going to school. I was in elementary school for sure in Santa Monica, and our school was shut down for like a month because we couldn't even go inside of it. It was, yeah, but I would much rather sit through a 10-15 second earthquake than have a tornado come through my city. That's insane.
same for sure. I know. Uh, yeah, it's always been interesting just going new places and like seeing
Yeah.
what people are um, like afraid of or connected to or whatever. Like
Yeah.
my partner is Japanese. I want to give a little shout out to her. And
All right.
just like this idea of like nature in Japan is like so different from like
Yeah.
our conception of it's kind of like saying like Eskimos have what's it like dozens of different words for ice, right?
Yeah. Sure.
It's that
Yeah.
In Japan, from my understanding, this word shizen is like there is no real like definition of nature. So I
Mm.
thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
It's not as like disconnected, like
Hmm.
like when we think of, or when I think of nature, I think of it very like it's like different. It's other. Like I
Yeah.
don't know if you've been to, I don't know, Costco, and you see like those giant TVs on sale and there's like a
Yeah.
waterfall or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're
Yeah.
like, nature.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
No, yeah, I get it. But for me, I've grown up in a city my entire life. This is why Griffith Park's my favorite place in Los Angeles, because it really was the closest I can get, from where I live to nature. And I mean, till this day, still, I'll go hours long walks and hikes through that place. And like you said, yeah, it's almost like it's a separate place. I mean, I'm not saying, for the rest of the country, but for a big city like Los Angeles, it's you have to, make an effort to get out and go experience nature.
oh yeah. And you don't have to travel far to
Yeah.
have a vacation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'd like San Diego. I mean, the amount of times my family vacation in San Diego, I mean, it's countless. That's one of the major ones. If you live in Los Angeles, San Diego, Vegas. and
But yes, Santa Barbara, for sure. I mean, I just went
yeah.
camping up there.
Oh
It's
yeah.
only an hour away. There's some
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
free camping spots. Los Padres Mountains, go out to
Yeah.
Ansbrago, Joshua Tree. Like
Oh
you
yeah.
don't
Yeah.
really don't need to go that far, and you can
Yeah.
do these things for free. Just sleep in your car, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's beautiful. All right. One last question though. Do you think that this sort of disconnect from the natural world, as technology sort of evolves and AI gets better and we sort of rely less on human interaction, do you think that there's something that can be done to, I don't know, maybe this is, harsh, maybe not the right word, maybe not convince, but to I guess convince people that, you know, maybe let's not destroy the world. Maybe let's sort of find a solution to, I mean, you've got the garbage patch in the Pacific Ocean. You've got, like, I mean, just climate change is, gosh, it seems like it's inevitable, right? It seems like we've hit a point where there's no looking back. Do you think that that sort of mindset will change?
I'm hopeful,
Yeah.
and that's like something I'm trying to convey in my work.
Yeah.
And I think language is the most important thing when it comes to like our relationship with nature. It's like
Mhm.
how we articulate things, how we
Yeah.
like objectify certain things. Like the piece behind me is like a giant shell,
Yeah.
right? And it's just this idea of like saying, okay, you're a shell of a person, like an empty shell or like a bombshell.
Yeah.
But also like understanding that like shells they're like this really crucial part of our ecosystem,
Yeah.
like filtering in like the intertidal zones, right? Like in between the beaches, like
Mhm.
on the beach, or basically between the sand and the ocean, this
Yeah.
intertidal zone. And they also, are like homes, like for hermit crabs, whatever.
Yeah.
But just taking like these objects, like these natural objects, and like classifying them as much more, and creating like transforming them into symbols
Yeah.
and like icons. And like if we continue to like objectify and like place these things sort of like below and
Mhm.
not empathize and not like learn from, then I feel like that's where that disconnect is going to continue. But if
Yeah.
we understand, like, I've got a little moth painting behind me,
Yeah.
the red one. Like there's some moth larvae that we've discovered that could like, consume plastics. And,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I've read about that. Yeah. Uh-huh.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
could be the savior of our, plastic crisis. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful. So
Yeah.
I want to stay positive, and I feel like everybody can make a difference in their own way. And
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do is create symbols through my work that help people like reevaluate their conceptions of nature.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and you do a great job of it. It's yeah, it's like you said, you know, the AI series here, the ones behind you, they're sort of a natural series. The John Muir series. I mean, there's lots of outdoor natural themes for you, and I think it's awesome, man. Yeah, big fan of your work. Absolutely big fan of your work. One last question. I like to ask this before I sign off. Is there any advice that you'd give to a young artist who maybe might not think that being an artist is in the cards for them?
Yeah. Well, I mean, kind of, I don't know if this is negative, but this is just kind of like
Mm-hmm.
a harsh reality. Like sometimes people who are not so talented, they make it big. Like it's a lot of circumstance and happening,
Sure.
like who you know. But I do think that if you put in enough energy and like time and like thought into something, and that you can like make it happen. It is possible. And
Yeah.
I think COVID was a bit of like an awakening for our city and our country to sort of
Oh yeah.
help out artists. And it's a very like satisfying career, and it's worth it in the long run. Like, I mean, I've been doing side jobs my whole life, and I'll
Yeah.
probably continue
Yeah.
to do side jobs
Yeah.
my whole life. But I still consider myself an artist. Like that's
Yeah.
everything
Oh,
I
yeah.
do for the greater good of being an artist. So
Yeah.
I think if you just hang on and like accept that not everyone makes it big, not everyone like, comes to this like crazy success or whatever, but you just like stay positive and keep making work because you just love to create.
Yeah.
And like, you feel like your message is important and you want to get out, then that's what really matters. And like this idea of an artist can mean so many different things.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
you just find one thing or a couple things that help you cope with your struggles, and that's all that matters, is like taking things day by day and making sure that you improve yourself and maybe other people along the way.
Okay.
Things.
Awesome. All right. Now, how can the people find you? What's the best way that people can check out what you're doing and what you have up and coming?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the easiest.
Yeah.
It's just excuse me. It's just at Trevor Coopersmith, TREVO.
All right. Awesome. All
Yeah,
right. Now
Coopersmith.
I'll flash it on the bottom of the screen. You know what? One thing I wanted to say, your website is very well put together. If any artists are watching this and they're thinking of putting a website together, check out Trevor's website. All right. It's very easy to navigate. It is very well put together, because I have seen some artist websites and I'm thinking, what are you doing? Like, you've got all this amazing stuff. Just make it easy for people to navigate, please. I mean, you've got all these great things. Just put it all together. Yeah. Great website.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I use Wix, and then I use that saying, less is more.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely wonderful. All right. Well, Trevor, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, big fan of yours. And if you've ever got anything coming up, anything you want to promote or talk about, you let me know, and I'll spread the word.
Thank you, Phil. Yeah, I appreciate the interview, and we'll stay in touch because I've got open studios and mid residencies, a lot of stuff going on with Otis. It's been a good community here, so
Nice.
we'll stay
Awesome.
in
Yeah.
touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Phil.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All